Big news involving Xavier Nwankpa. Maybe. Welcome to Iowa Hawkeyes Live right here at the Voice of College Football. We're here every Tuesday with Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Get on over there to From the Hawkeye of the Storm for the very best in Iowa coverage of men's and women's basketball and, of course, football. Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mark. Is this the first week of the new? You got the backdrop back up, and you got the helmet. This is the first week in how many months?
The first week in what?
First week where you've had the backdrop like it is.
Oh, the backdrop. Yes. We will be ditching the backdrop as soon as possible.
We will? Why are we doing that?
I don't like it.
Well, are you just going to get rid of it, or are you going to get a new one? Or
it's
what?
hiding a dining room is what it's doing right now. I'm down in the sunroom.
I
hiding
like it.
the dining room.
I've always liked the backdrop, Mark. I've always liked the backdrop. Your backdrop is better than my backdrop. So
well, I don't know about that. I'm a bit disappointed with it. Not that they did anything wrong, but I just kind of didn't estimate it as well as I would have liked. However, so we use it when needed, but I don't know that it's going to be long-lived here.
If anybody has any advice how to get a fold, you see this, there's like a fold in the backdrop, this crease that cannot get out of the backdrop.
Oh, okay.
So when it was transported, there was this crease, and this is material that you're afraid of damaging because I don't even know what the material is, but you don't want to just throw an iron on there and wreck the material. So I've been nervous about trying to figure out how to.
I don't know what that is. Mine, this last move, well, not the last, the last move really wrinkled it up.
Yeah, I know. Moving it, and you got the advantage though that yours is mostly white. When it's really dark, I think it shows those creases even more. So, anyways, I'm sure this is a riveting conversation for
Absolutely.
people.
Folks, stay tuned. We're going to add an extra live stream this week, and we're just going to discuss backdrop solely, nothing else.
Backdrop talk at the Voice of College Football. Yes,
it's nothing better.
We could just call it Backdrop Live, Mark.
We could do that.
So let me address the thing you mentioned about Xavier Nwankpa. It was kind of a joke, halfway a joke. Somebody yesterday sent me a screenshot from an Iowa reporter that stated that Xavier Nwankpa would be entering the transfer portal in May. Now, before everybody hits the panic button, I went ahead. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't follow this reporter. Don't even know if it was I think it was from a message board somewhere. So I just checked with someone that I know that's well connected to the program, and they said, no, that's not true at all. Don't know where that's malarkey. I would give the Iowa, I'm not going to say who the Iowa reporter is. I'll give the Iowa reporter the benefit of the doubt. I believe it was maybe from an April Fool's joke, and somebody screenshotted it and it got circulating. It's been circulating through some groups yesterday and today. So not to be alarmed. I don't believe it sounds like there's no substance to that at all. I think it was purely some snarkiness, a joke there for April Fools. But anyways, nothing on that note, nothing about Xavier Nwankpa. I know we're going to talk about defensive line today. Of course, we're in the middle of spring ball. I did get some interesting tidbit from my source today, the same source that spelled the Nwankpa notion about a certain defensive lineman who's new to the program this spring. We can talk about him off the bat, or we can wait till later in the show, Mark.
Well, we could always encourage that source to double down and report that Caden Proctor has left Alabama camp and is coming back to Iowa.
That will be the day if that happens. I will say this, like if Xavier Nwankpa, like I have, again, no reason to think he has any intention of ever leaving, but it is the era of the transfer portal. He was very close to Caden Proctor. So although there's no fact to that, no truth to that tweet or that comment, again, just being a joke, I would not be shocked. Like if down the line, someone like that leaves. I don't want that to happen. Hopefully he's here 3 years and then he's good enough to where he, can be a first or second round pick from Iowa. But you just never know in this era of the portal.
Who has been the most substantial transfer portal loss for this program?
For this program?
Yeah.
In the era of the portal?
Well, Charlie Jones. Hello.
Well, that's fair, Charlie Jones, but they've lost others. I mean, Justin Jacobs to Oregon was a big one that just came to mind this year. But no, Charlie Jones would be big. But I mean, if you're looking at production other than special teams, you didn't lose a ton of production. You just you lost talent. You lost potential, obviously. So yeah, no, I mean Charlie Jones would be the obvious one. I'm sure some people can tell us in the chat somebody I'm missing, but obviously Justin Jacobs is one that hurts. I mean, heck, they lost their two best receivers this past cycle, Mark, in Arlen Bruce and Keegan Johnson. So, I mean, this is just how college football is now. So, anyways, no substance to the Wampa chatter, but just saying nothing would surprise me anymore. They've lost some quarterbacks, some guys that never developed or didn't appear to ever develop, but guys that we were high on out of high school, like Deuce Hogan and Carson May. So that happens, and it is what it is. I will tell you this, from everything I've heard from spring ball, they continue to deal with injuries. I don't have any update to share on personally. I'm not getting any update on Jacob Bostic or Seth Anderson or those injuries. They've been banged up. They've been dinged up on the offensive line. It sounds like Iowa's starting kicker has been dinged up as well. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It seems like we have the same conversation every year. It's just like every year we have the same conversation. Oh, nobody's playing in the spring game. This is ransacked with injuries. The bad luck bug bit us again, Mark. It's like this is just what we deal with every year. So I don't know what to make of it. I think this is just how football works. I don't know. Like I'd have to measure it against other programs. It just seems like every spring that's one of the big storylines. How many injuries we're dealing with. So I don't know whether to read into it or not.
Well, I would say that you would be in, or I would be in better position to answer this question because you're focused on the Iowa football program, and I am all over the place covering all these teams. I don't see anything inordinate about it. I think spring football is dealt with much differently than it was 10 or 15 years ago. If there is any question about anyone, then they are just kind of put through the paces, kind of leave them alone, or completely taken off the field because they've proven themselves. So Michigan's not playing either running back. Ohio State, a number of wide receivers, their top three wide receivers, and there's no concern that they will be compromised in any way in the fall, but they're just not playing in the spring.
Yeah. And by the way, next Tuesday, we'll be kind of previewing the spring game or the spring scrimmage, which will take place a week from Saturday. And my guess is what normally happens is we hear about a few injuries that have dinged up the two deeps. And then when we, just like you said, when we hit that actual spring scrimmage where it's open to the public, there is going to be a plethora of guys sitting out. Some because of actual injuries, some due to precautionary reasons. And it's going to be, we're all going to be blowing up about how big it is and how, man, they're just, who knows what to think about this team moving into the summer. So I don't know who those guys are going to be. Obviously, you want the new guys to stay healthy, right? I mean, if you're going to get anybody dinged up, you don't want anybody hurt, right? But if Nico Reganey sits out this spring, probably not a deal breaker, although you want all your receivers to build up some chemistry with McNamara, especially your number one receiver. But like Seth Anderson, I don't know where he's at. I haven't reached out to anybody, including Seth, about his injury. I mean, to me, it's just like, let's just see if he plays on a week from Saturday. He's somebody that I think is really important that he plays this spring. One, because he's new to the system, and two, because he's never played with Cade McNamara. So those two guys got to build some chemistry, and a lot of that will take place in fall camp, but spring doesn't hurt. The other quarterbacks, I know that we're all focused in, we're honed in on Cade McNamara, and is he going to be ready, and how far can he take this team? Let's not forget that he is coming off a serious knee, or a somewhat serious knee injury, and he goes down. Who's option B? Is it Joey Labus? Is it Deacon Hill? Is it Marco Linez, who hasn't gotten here yet? I mean, those are questions that still need to be answered. So you better be developing those other guys. And Deacon Hill's new to the program. Joey Labus just got his first career start in the bowl game against a depleted Kentucky team. So, yeah, I mean, this is contrary to some people and their belief about what spring ball is all about. Like, you got to build depth, and they've had a lot of recruits on campus here the last few weeks, which is good. Visiting spring ball and whatnot, but wide receiver, and I know we're going to talk about defensive line. They've lost some pieces on the defensive line. We're going to be seeing where Lucas Van Ness. What day is the draft? Is that?
It is whatever weekend is like in the mid-20s in April 2020. 28th, 29th.
Okay, so it must be so it's the weekend right after Iowa spring. That's what I was thinking. But and then the portal window opens next Monday. Am I right?
It does.
So it's going to be crazy.
Actually,
it's going to
Saturday.
This
April
Saturday?
15th. April 15th is Saturday.
It's going to, I don't know how crazy. I don't know how I've had people ask me that. How active is it going to be? I don't know. Somebody asked me that question on your show yesterday. How active, what's the portal window going to be like? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be like December.
Just in general, they were asking this?
Just in general. Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's going to be pretty active.
I don't think you're going to have the number of big names entering the portal because most of those big names are going to be, a lot of guys who are going to be leaving this cycle are going to be guys who fell down the depth chart. Not always. Charlie Jones is one guy that he left late. He left in June. So I don't.
That situation's still just. Oh my goodness.
Well, he and I don't blame him one bit. We've had these discussions.
I don't either. Charlie he went Jones. And caught 110 passes.
Yeah, I know, and he's going to be drafted. We're going to see where he ends up in the draft here in a few weeks. So, anyways, portal, spring scrimmage, NFL draft, lots of stuff coming here. And have I been doing a lot of content publishing on my channel over the last couple of weeks about football? No, because other than just talking about, we know this guy's dinged up and this will be interesting. I don't blame the media. It's got to do what the media's got to do. But the traditional sports media, the Iowa sports media, like everything I read is just 5 questions to have answered this spring. And, how far can Cade McNamara take this team? That kind of generic fluff, I don't have any interest in consuming. Now, maybe people like that stuff. It's out there if you want to consume it. But I'll be looking forward to being able to see this team in person in a week and a half, and hopefully we'll have some storylines. Because last year, I remember thinking, not in the spring game, but the kids' scrimmage, we saw some things. We saw Jacob Bostic make some plays. It gives me reason to believe that he can, if he's healthy, can maybe step up and be a starting receiver in time. We saw that none of the quarterbacks looked real great. We did see that there was a divide between Petrus and the other two. At least it appeared that way in person. And although I still don't know if that's the case, I think we're all in agreement that the quarterback room is just pretty porous. I'm curious. Here's the other thing I'm curious on, Mark. Has SMU had their spring game yet?
I don't track the group of 5 that well, but I don't know. Okay.
I'm just curious about what Alex Padilla, I'm assuming he's healthy, and is he, how involved he is with spring ball. That's going to be an interesting storyline to follow.
I was smirking earlier because I just encountered a tweet just today where somebody was tweeting out that, and maybe it was passed on to me. Maybe somebody kind of forwarded this because I don't follow this person. It was just kind of a random fan that tweeted out, I'm a college football fan. Are there any YouTubers or any people out there that cover the sport, not talk about realignment constantly? Can I get actual college football coverage from anyone? And I just basically said,
so I'm just curious. Here I am. I'm just curious real quick, Mark. I saw that reply. I saw your reply to that tweet.
I don't even know what I replied, but whatever it was, I'm
just
here.
Curious. Yeah. Like, is it, because you're like me, I don't go on YouTube and watch I just don't watch a bunch of Iowa YouTubers. I don't watch a bunch of I don't think there are a lot of Iowa YouTubers. I don't watch a lot of college football YouTubers. Like, I just don't do that. I have a few channels that I subscribe to that are non-football related. And that's basically what I do. You need a reprieve if you're constantly talking about something. It's like you with Elvis, Mark. So here's the deal. I'm just curious. Are there that many? Are these other college football channels out there? Are they really focusing that strongly on realignment? Is that seriously? We just can't get away from that storyline. How many months has it been since the USC UCLA news dropped?
Well, again, I'm not the person to answer this because, like you say, I'm not out there consuming much content. But at the same time, I do know that about a month ago, in particular, I'm doing a live stream. I get done. We all know the deal. Those of us who do live streams, if you're on YouTube, then suddenly the YouTube, your own homepage comes up. You have the array of options that YouTube is sending you and pushing. And I looked at this and I'm just going like, there must have been 12 live streams going on at the same time as mine, college football live streams. And they were all talking. And I knew who about 2 out of the 12 were. And all of them, a dozen of them roughly, we're talking conference realignment. On a night or a day that there was no news that came out.
Were they actually getting views? Were there people watching these streams?
Yeah, there were people watching. Yes.
Okay. I'm not gonna rip on anybody what they choose to watch and consume, but man, that would just make my head hurt if I had to listen to that nonsense all day. So much of it's just speculation. It's just nonsense that we just, I guess people like that. I don't personally.
And I got to the point where, from the very beginning with the USC UCLA and the summer before Oklahoma, Texas, the most watched videos that I have generally on my platform, we're talking anywhere between 30 and 70,000 views from realignment talk. But it has to be legitimate for me to continue to deliver that. One of two things has to happen. Either number one, there has to be somebody of prominence who said something. A president of a university said something substantial and that I think needs to be interpreted or speculated on. So I will pursue that, or I will certainly come up with my various scenarios that I think are reasonable. But yeah, it's just a bit much. All right. Before we get to the defensive line for Iowa here, I find it amusing that if Ari Gold gets his way, then
fire everybody.
Yeah, you're going to be a busy man.
Whatever.
Okay.
I don't agree with. I don't agree with.
I know. I just find it amusing. Before we do get to the defensive line, Corey, can you let me know what's I'm curious about the gear, the matching T-shirt and hat.
Well, they're not matching. This is just a Hawkeye cap. This is just a Iowa Hawkeyes cap. See, Iowa Hawkeyes. And then this is a Super Fran T-shirt.
Super Fran. Okay.
The reason I wore this today, I usually try to not dress too casual on here, but this is the one shirt I'll sometimes wear on a live stream. I'm happy about the addition. I got a lot of pushback yesterday. I published a video because Iowa added a big out of the transfer portal. Iowa basketball did. So many people ripping on Fran for, this guy not being, he's a leading scorer out of the Missouri Valley Conference, which, Mark, is a good basketball conference. He's a leading scorer, averaged 19 a game. I think it was Jeff Goodman, I respect Jeff Goodman, what he does for college basketball, but he made a comment about quoting some scout or some analyst that this guy, Ben Cricky, who's from transferring in from Valparaiso, about how he's an above average scorer, below average rebounder and defender. And everybody's freaking out. Typical Fran recruit. What a joke. We can't get athletes and size and defense. And I'm like, well, first of all, they need scoring because they're losing Philip Rebracha, who gave them a good amount of scoring. Not saying he's going to come in and score 19. He's got good game. He's a lefty, great toucher on the basket. He can shoot the pull up, shoot the fadeaway. He's not the best defender, but it's still a plus. They've got scholarships available. They've got a couple guys coming to campus. I hope a couple guys coming to campus. I know they've got 2 scheduled. Rumors that one has been canceled. But anyways, so I was happy about the news, and I think Cricky's going to be a good addition. He's 6'9", gives him some size. Boy, they need size. They don't have a big with Gundele and Rebracha leaving. They needed a big, and they got one. So anyways, backstory, real quick segue.
I was just curious. The microphone covered up some of the shirt there, so I thought it was
be a little bit more proud.
Looked like Superman, of course. It looked like it
right.
said Superman. Makes total sense. Very good. All right, defensive line. Am I correct in saying that going into fall camp that this will most likely be the most stable and the most talent-filled position on the team?
Yeah, either that or tight end. I mean, I don't know how you can dispute what they have at tight end with the production that Eric All has proven at a high level. Obviously, Luke Lachey nipping at his heels hasn't shown necessarily the volume that Laporta or All have, and then you got to Addison Ostrengo. So that's obviously a strong position. I think we've talked about tight end. I think, but yeah, they got plenty of depth on the D line, and you also bring back. Noah Shannon is coming back for an extra year. Joe Evans is coming back for his COVID year. So although neither of those guys are probably NFL guys, maybe Noah Shannon gets a shot in the league someday. I think Evans is a little small, but they give you great depth. And one of the things that Phil Parker's defenses have prided themselves on in recent years is depth and being able to throw a lot of guys at you and never having guys who are tired. And I just speaking of that today, Mark, I kind of teased this earlier. A source who's close to the program, I thought this was an interesting quote. Let me find it. 4 words. Terrio is real deal. And of course, the source is talking about Ontario Thompson. So we've talked about him. He looks the part. He played at a really good JUCO here in Iowa. He's kind of a freak physically, and wore the same number as Davion Nixon. Plays the same position, about the same size, coming out of community of JUCO. So I would guess that he's going to play. I mean, I don't know how much, because guys, again, when you're 8-9 deep, I don't know. This is his first year here, and they've got experienced, seasoned guys. But the point is, I would guess that he could come in and log a bunch of snaps. We'll see what he looks like at spring. Hopefully he's healthy and hopefully he plays. And then Aaron Graves. I mean, that tandem right there. And I said this when Ontario Thompson committed out of Iowa Western. Like, think about the potential of that tandem down the line, Mark. Ontario Thompson and Aaron Graves running on the interior of this line, regardless of who is outside. That's a scary, scary future for some Big Ten offensive lines. So that's something to be excited about. I don't know that both those guys are going to be the star. I don't think they're going to be starting this year. But Iowa's got Logan Lee back on the interior. They've got, as I said, Noah Shannon back on the interior. So they don't need those guys to start. I think they're going to be really good. Jackson Filer's another guy who is coming in. I believe he was, am I correct in saying he was Western as well, coming in as a walk-on that I know Iowa likes. Probably not a guy who plays right away, but obviously Iowa liked him. And so they got plenty of depth. Maxwell will run on the outside. Deontay Craig, Ethan Herkett, Jeremiah Pittman got a little bit of run last year on the inside. Y.A. Black's another one. We didn't bring him up. There were rumors that he was going to switch to O-tackle. Heard that a few weeks ago. And as of right now, he's still listed as a defensive lineman, so I'm assuming he stays. But he's obviously big enough to switch to the offensive line. He's listed, Mark, at 6'5", 306. So if they thought he could play offensive tackle or they needed him, I'm guessing they'd move him over. But the point is that they are stacked. And then who knows what the development of Brian Allen, second-year guy, is a former 4-star. This will be his second spring. What does he do? Caden Crawford, his first spring. Kid out of Lansing, Kansas. And I feel like I'm missing somebody, possibly. But
Corey, I get the impression in some of the review I did of this defensive front is that despite the loss of John Wagner and Lucas Van Ness, obviously, that they're, you mentioned the guys that produced last year, that the guys that were starters, that were solid players that produced, that in addition to that, some of the best, the guys with the high ceilings, Deontay Craig, Aaron Graves, and now Ontario Thompson coming into the program, are the youngest guys or the younger guys that still have a lot of growth potential. And it just seems to be a really good situation.
It does. And give credit to Kelvin Bell and Phil Parker. And by the way, this is what kind of confused me. I'm staring here at the Iowa roster as it's shown on the Iowa website. And what confused me is I'm looking at Logan Jones, who was Iowa's center last year, and he's listed as a defensive lineman on here. Now, remember, he switched from defensive line to center last year. So as far as I'm aware, he has not switched back. But according to the Iowa roster, he is a defensive lineman. So I don't know.
Unless the Iowa site, the official site, is much more updated, promptly updated than other collegiate sites, I'm guessing that that's still a holdover from even last. Like if you go to any individual player and read their bio, you may not even be reading the 2022.
Sure. Usually, though, Mark, positions are up to date. Typically, let me give you an example. I look at, let me look at Devin Hilson. I believe he is listed as, he's listed as a DB, and he was a running back at this time last year. So I don't know. It's probably just a clerical error, but I did just notice that. So, they bring in Rusty Feth at along the offensive line, and he played center at Miami. Sounds like they want him to play guard at Iowa. So again, no reason to read into that too far, but they've got some questions to answer on that side of the ball. But yeah, they're going to be stacked on that defensive line. And I think the one guy I failed to mention was Deontay Craig. I mean, he's a little undersized. I mean, 6'3", 266, but man, talk about some some pass rushers potentially. Deontay Craig on one end, Joe Evans on the other, and maybe on some third down packages. Have those two guys out there alongside Aaron Graves and Ontario Thompson. I mean, that's a pretty vicious front four to be coming at you. So,
not that the back seven of the defense in Iowa's case needs it, but I am a big believer that a devastating defensive front can mask so many flaws on the rest of the defense. Obviously, at the point of attack, if they make plays, your corner could be lost in coverage. Your linebacker could fail to read the blocking setup and where the play was hit. All those things get completely negated if your defensive line is devastating. Now, obviously, they can't do everything, but just they mask a lot of issues.
The same can be said on the opposite side, right? Like Iowa's running backs can be really good. Cade McNamara can be really good. Even the receivers can be better. But boy, if you can't protect, forget it. And that's why, as much as I've been clamoring for Iowa to go to the portal at quarterback, which they finally did, it doesn't prove that they're going to be substantially better. They're going to be better. All right. I mean, they're going to be better. But how much better? I mean, if they can't improve the offensive line, who knows? They did some work there. They also missed on a couple guys, Walter Rouse being one. They got Dejon Parker, as we've talked about, and Rusty Feth. But yeah, it goes both ways. And that's the crazy thing about what Phil Parker has built, not just with the defensive line, but this entire unit, is you've had, I mean, consistently, not every year, but consistently, the offensive line is below average. That's what's crazy about a program that we think of being an offensive line, starts up front and, run ground and pound type of program. And yet the defense almost every year, and because they're successful as a team, they're winning 8 to 9 games basically every year. This is a successful program in spite of that almost every year, because the defensive line and the entire defensive unit make up for that. It is an incredible feat. Now, I heard somebody, was it yesterday, bring up Brett Venables. Is it Brett? Is that right?
Brent. Yep.
Brent Venables. Thank you. Brent Venables. Where do you stand? I don't hear you talk a whole. I mean, I know you have an Oklahoma show, so I shouldn't say that, but I haven't heard you talk a whole lot about Oklahoma.
About an hour a week we talk about it.
Where are you at with Venables? Are you bought in? Are you have big question marks?
So everything I've heard out of Brent Venables and I've witnessed at his time at Clemson. So he was hired from Oklahoma, where he was the defensive coordinator and highly successful there, even though they started to falter later in his tenure at Oklahoma. There was a Geno Smith 70 spot that they put on Clemson in the Orange Bowl in 2011. Immediately, Brent Venables was brought in to fix that. He did. We know what Clemson football was after that. 2 national championships, 4 national championship games, etc. He goes to Oklahoma. Now, the first season was rough. Now, the one thing that did not get accomplished there that I was surprised was, wouldn't you think, now Oklahoma is not at the level that it should be defensively in terms of both player acquisition and player development. But if you matched up Oklahoma's recruiting on the defensive side and Iowa's, I can almost guarantee that Oklahoma's would be better just based on sheer numbers. However, they've had bad defenses generally under Lincoln Riley, and at the very best, marginal defenses under Lincoln Riley. Brent Venables comes in, and wouldn't you expect, even before he can fully recruit his guys, upgrade the talent, that just by sheer by having the reputation as being one of the best defensive minds in the sport, that he would just be able to fix certain things, not elevate them to an elite defense, but just take the guys that he's given. And they were awful last year on the defensive side of the ball. Atrocious.
And the only reason I bring him up is because when we have these conversations about Phil Parker, you wonder, like, Brent Venables was one of those guys that held out for a while, taking a job. You know, he was a coveted defensive coordinator. And I'm certainly not saying Phil Parker wouldn't be successful somewhere else, but Brent has not proven that's a guarantee. And if he has a down year this year, who knows? So I can kind of see, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I can kind of see why someone like Phil Parker is content with making over $1 million a year, being the most liked guy in the Iowa program without having to be a head coach.
Yeah, it all depends what your personal goals are, but Brent Venables is making $7 or $8 million per year, and he's leading a top 5 program.
A lot more stress though when you're losing.
Sure.
Well, I mean, if Iowa loses, it's because of the offense more often than not. So it's like, even when Iowa loses, I'm not saying Phil Parker doesn't lose sleep, but I mean, yeah.
You are looking to launch your, I don't want to screw up the presentation of it, but you mentioned this a few weeks ago, and also to me on the phone a few times, your Brian Ferentz points per game meter.
Tracker. Yep.
Tracker. Yes.
Yep. And I'm looking to try to get if anybody can help me, I'm looking to try to get a very high quality photo that is of Brian Ferentz for the little logo up in the corner of the screen. It's going to be him standing next to his points per game tracker, which is going to change every post game, every week that they play. What they're averaging points per game wise will change. And I would put Phil Parker on the other side of that if I didn't have such a high opinion of Phil Parker, because let's be honest, Phil Parker is going to help pad those numbers, as is LeVar Woods.
That is, yes, that has been the track record, that the Iowa defense is certainly going to help prop up that offense, not just giving them field position, but actually scoring points. Yes. So I thought that was an ingenious idea. I'm looking forward to that. And if anyone out there wants to sponsor, certainly contact Corey.
Yeah. And Mark, let's not forget too, this coming year, you're going to be starting an FCS at the Voice of College Football channel, right? And a few other channels, right? We're launching some more of those, and I'm telling you that I'm going to stick on that. That is the one, man. That really? I think we can have a conversation about it, but I think I really do think that is the ticket.
Before I would start a Minnesota channel, Arkansas, Ole Miss.
No. Been there, done that. You need to go out there and start an FCS at the Voice of College Football channel. I really believe it.
I don't watch it. I don't have time to watch it. I'm not snubbing it in any way.
Okay.
I could host a show every week if you can give me analysts that know what they're talking about, and I would basically open it by saying, yeah, we had some FCS games this week. Let's let John break it down for you.
You're saying you don't watch FCS football is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I have got anything against it, but I don't have time to watch FCS football. I don't have time to watch Group of 5 football. I tell people that all the time when they want my opinion on Group of 5 teams, and I say, I can only watch so many games.
Yeah, I get that, but I will say, take a look at what Hair Trigger just said in the chat. I don't have to repeat it, but you just look at what Hair Trigger. He knows exactly where it's at.
Yeah, the word that caught me was might. That was the word that stood out.
There are no guarantees, Mark. But all I know is I'm sure there's lots of North Dakota State fans and South Dakota State fans out there, and I'm not aware of any major YouTube coverage. Now, maybe it's because I don't search for it, but anyways, we can move on. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I will say it's not for tonight, but I'm looking forward to sharing Iowa TV ratings numbers when things slow down.
Are they better than
in May or June?
Expected? Did better than you expected?
No, not expected, but the Big Ten is extremely strong. It's just it's astounding to me. For example, Ohio State Northwestern doesn't sound like much of a game, does it?
No, but with the Ohio State following that it is, every game
it was on ABC at noon, so it had a decent time slot and network, but that game outrated every game in the Pac-12. Every game in the Pac-12. USC, UCLA.
It was also an ugly game. It was also like, it was not a fun game to watch.
No.
That was like the tornado scene in The Wizard of Oz with Dorothy.
This was another thing I found astounding was, and I don't want to take it too far off topic because, Iowa performed extremely well. The Michigan game, the Ohio State game were both either the most watched or the second most watched games of the week. The Big Ten Network obviously has to, select whichever games after the big networks take their games, and they've got a certain pecking order, but they come out with some pretty prominent, important games. Iowa, Nebraska is kind of isolated because that's a Friday, and that's usually a Fox game or ABC, but it was on the Big Ten Network this year. But Iowa, Illinois, very important game in the Big Ten Western Division. Purdue, Maryland was an extremely important game for Purdue. That was an exciting game. And I'm talking about really good games and important games. Do you know what the most watched game on the Big Ten Network was last year? And it wasn't even close.
Iowa, Nebraska?
Well, that actually was within about 400,000 viewers, but no. Ohio State and Rutgers.
Why? Because of Ohio State's following? Is
that's about all we can.
Did they have? So how many games? How many Big Ten Network games did Ohio State have?
That might be the only one.
Okay, so there's your answer.
Double check. I think
there's your answer. It's the Ohio State fan base, right? I mean, that's all there is to it.
And I've really gotten into these TV ratings the last few weeks, and there's folks, if you care, they're all posted on the main channel, and I keep getting requests, and as long as people watch them, I will deliver the various requests. But I've just been the Big Ten at noon, whether that was, and obviously that's heavily dominated by Ohio State and Michigan, but it's a lot of Iowa and it's a lot of Penn State as well. Just crushed everyone at noon, that noon Eastern time window. And ESPN, that Ohio State Rutgers game went directly up against a decent game on ESPN. And ESPN, and I broke this down from a number of different angles in terms of how these conferences fared and so forth. And an ESPN versus a Big Ten matchup was, that's typically like a 5-to-1 audience, probably more than that. And that was the only time all season that the Big Ten Network outrated the ESPN game.
Wow. That's hard to do too, given the regional.
Yeah. The subscriber
effect.
rate.
Yeah.
But I find that stuff fascinating, and I try to make some kind of sense out of it and explain, at least within context, what I see out of it.
Just curious, ratings wise, did you see my tweet about college basketball ratings here like a week ago?
Men's games or women's?
Men's.
That they're down. Correct?
Yeah, they're least viewed title game on record. Least viewed title game, 14.7 million.
So
between San Diego State and UConn.
San Diego State and UConn, I would think would have something to do with that.
Well, but UConn, if you look at their history, Mark, UConn is blue blood.
Oh, yeah.
Whether people want to admit that or not. If you look at their title history
But is their popularity the same as Kansas, North Carolina?
No, of course not. And by the way, it is last year you had 4 true blue bloods in the Final Four. And let's see, the last 3 games have ranked among the 4 least watched college basketball title games in history.
Yeah.
That is somewhat startling.
It's startling, and I think it's alarming, but I also think it's due to the teams that we're playing. I do think that that's meaningful. I do think that is speaking to the decline in the sport, but I also think it's speaking to the teams involved. I watched more NCAA tournament games this year than I have probably in 10 years.
Is it decline in the sport or is it decline in the championship? Like, I don't know that you can just say it's the sport. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I wonder. Part of me always has wondered, why do we have the games on at 8:30 on a Monday night? That's just stupid. You're starting at 9:30 Eastern time for a championship game. That's just dumb.
Yeah, I guess it starts that late.
Yes.
It's 8:30 Central?
8:20 Central was the tip time tonight or last week.
Yeah, that's late.
And just put this in perspective, Mark. I mean, I know I brought this up a million times. 14.7 million viewers for the men's national championship. The women's national championship between Iowa and LSU got 9.9, which is it's the most viewed college event ever on ESPN Plus. It was on ABC and ESPN2, so it's all that, ESPN's pushing it everywhere. But I'm just saying, like, that gap is not that big.
No, it's not. The men's game was on CBS, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to go back through the years and compare the men's and women's ratings. Obviously, the women's ratings have skyrocketed and the men's have flatlined or declined.
Obviously. And I guarantee you the women's ratings have been completely insignificant when you compare them to them. But as I say, each sport appears to be going in opposite directions. And it's not like the women's viewers were taking anything away from the men's viewers. They were playing on different nights. So I don't know. I just found that interesting, and I'm not saying it's going to continue. I do think the women's game has interesting people right now involved, and whether that carries over once those players graduate and leave, we don't know. And there's more parity. I think part of the issue with men's college basketball, Mark, is there's more parity due to the transfer portal. So you have, like you said, maybe you have more balance across the landscape, but that also hurts total viewership when you have a team like San Diego State make it that doesn't have as big of a following. I think it's good for the sport in a sense, but it's not necessarily good for TV ratings. I wonder what ESPN had to pay. Like, what do you think Turner Sports we could find this out. What do you think Turner Sports paid just for this year to be able to have the title game? If you just looked at the title game, what they paid, and then you look at just what ESPN had to pay for the women's title game.
Well, that's not how it's paid.
I know.
That's not the contract.
I understand, but I'm just saying if we broke it down to that.
Oh, it's not close.
I'm guessing ESPN boys over at ESPN are doing cartwheels right now based on these numbers.
Here are the women's viewership totals from 2013 to 2016. I just went back 10 years, and I just Googled 2013
for national championship
game. And this is at a time when UConn's winning the national championship game by more than 30 points in all of these games. That's ridiculous. But anyway, 3.2, 4.2, 3.1, and 3. That's the million viewers.
What years is that?
2013 through 16.
Okay, and then do you have after that?
I just Googled. I wanted to go back.
I'm just curious, what does it look like since 16?
Oh, shoot. It took me to an article. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure we could go through.
How long can we have awkward silence until the viewership starts going down?
You would be surprised. Well, I'm sure you've been silent at times, and everybody hangs on. So that's okay.
You feel that clock ticking in your mind.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's just so. What was the least viewed Big Ten football game on Big Ten Network this year?
Oh, I'd have to.
And how many viewers?
Well, you'd have to understand what it was going up against. On Ohio State, Michigan, 17 million people watched Ohio State and Michigan play. Maryland and Rutgers was being shown in the Big Ten Network at the same time. 97,000 people watched it.
That's 97,000?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, you got to figure.
I know,
if you would see the list of games, not just Ohio State, Michigan, but
I bet your reruns of Andy Griffith were getting more views than that. I'm serious. Over on Comet Network,
there can be only so many. There were probably 30 million people watching college football, and why would they be watching that game?
Yeah. I don't know. So what does it show peak numbers? Like, because I noticed the women's peak was 12.6 million.
No, not on the site that I've been using. I know that information's available.
Okay. So anyways, yeah, that's all I have. TV ratings.
2013 men's championship. Oh, it's this is the whole tournament. Anyway, yeah, it's too complicated to try to look through.
So anything I missed? We were talking about defensive line.
Yeah, we were talking defensive line, weren't we? Okay, yes,
we were. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. They did sign a slew of defensive linemen. I don't necessarily know beyond Ontario Thompson that these guys are going to get much play this year. But
yeah, Chase Brackney's one out of Colorado. Yep. He's not there yet. He's big. He's kind of a big body. They lost a kid to Iowa State who decommitted and flipped to the Cyclones. Whose name already David Kalker from Des Moines North. He flipped, so he's done. So Brackney, Ontario Thompson, Maddox Borcherding Johnson out of Norwalk is another one. Interviewed him a couple times in the show. Really great kid, nice kid. Great, comes from a good family. Wish him the best. I think he's going to probably be, I don't want to call him a project, but he's going to take some development. He'll learn, I'm sure, from Noah Shannon. I kind of compared him to Noah Shannon. He compared himself. He's like, I'd rather be more like a Davion Nixon, which I understand why a guy would want to emulate someone like Davion, but I think he looks more like the Noah Shannon type, which is his size and what he can give you. So now I always had some successful guys like that. Nathan Budgeta comes to mind, Cedric Lattimore. So am I missing anybody? Brackney, Thompson, Borcherding Johnson.
Kenneth Merriweather,
who's more of a prototypical edge rusher, did not enroll early. He played a lot of receiver in high school, so he's a good athlete, really good athlete. I don't know as much about Kenneth. I've never had an interview scheduled with him, and then it fell through at one time, so I don't really know him very well, but he's a good athlete. I can tell you that at a Martin Luther King High School up in Detroit.
Cade Piper,
late ad project. I would say project. Is he listed as a D lineman?
He is.
Okay, yeah. I think he played a lot of O-line in high school, if I'm not mistaken. Again, is not there yet. Small. What's he listed at size-wise?
That I don't know.
Are you sure it's not Peeper?
It might be Peeper. I don't know.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah. I've
not interviewed him on my channel either. He is 6'4", 240, Mark.
Yeah.
So he's going to be a weight room project. He was maybe the last addition to the class, one of the last additions to the class. So
Hair Trigger is reminding us of Ethan Herkett and Ya Black.
YA Black.
YA Black. You talked about YA Black.
And it's not spelled YA. It's like
it's like YAH.
YHYA, I think is how you spell it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've said this before. I was at Media Day last year, and dude, that dude is a man. Like, he is huge. And when I first heard rumors that he might switch to O-line, I thought, let's go. I mean, like, that's the kind of dude that Iowa needs. But as far as I'm aware, that hasn't occurred. So I'm guessing not everybody's cut out to be an offensive tackle. Just because you're big, Mark, doesn't mean you can play offensive tackle. Like, you got to have. I'm sure footwork is a lot. This would be a better question for Don Patterson. I'm guessing you better have good enough feet to be a tackle as opposed to maybe a defensive tackle where you can get away with below average feet. That'd just be one thing that I would guess. Maybe your arms, your arm length. Obviously, you want to have long arms if you're a D end. I don't know if it's quite as important on the interior, but if you're playing tackle, I think arm length, wingspan is important. So who knows if that was really a discussion or just a rumor out there. But yeah, the bottom line is they're deep. And here's one thing I really look forward to, Mark, once you get to Media Day, is seeing, and we haven't gotten to some of these guys. And a lot of times when we're previewing spring roster, we're talking about guys who are there now. That's why I didn't bring up any of the freshmen who haven't enrolled yet. But man, there are some guys in this class that, like, I published a video, an interview with Aiden Hall the other day from Harlan, Iowa, very football rich community. And Aiden He's got underrated speed. He's coming in to play safety. Might end up transitioning to linebacker. Had offers from I think 2 or 3 military academies. Minnesota, I think, was on the list. Maybe even Kansas State. He someone like that. Once he gets to Iowa, would not be surprised if someone like that works under the special teams unit in the fall. Another Zach Lutmer, another small town Iowa kid who's drawn some comparisons to Cooper DeJean. They got some good, some kind of underrated. They always do have dark horse prospects. I remember last year saying the same thing about Addison Estringa, who emerged this year. They got some sneaky, talented guys that kind of flew under the radar as normal. And although I don't think the class was, with Proctor gone, I don't look back at the class as maybe one of Kirk's best classes, but I think it's got a chance to be a really good class, given some of the people that are coming in. And obviously they need help at receiver. They got several guys coming in at wide receiver as well.
Are you going to have the opportunity to go to the spring game?
Oh, yeah. Yep, I'll be there, and we'll plan is to do a live stream probably later that day. So we'll have a Hawkeye Hangout live stream. We may even see if we can get Don Patterson on. I don't know if Don's going to be there or not. I haven't talked to him, but yeah, we'll definitely be there.
All right, folks. Look forward to that a week from Saturday from Iowa City. In the meantime, Corey, what do you have working there at the channel? I know that you've been on hiatus, not completely, but laying low to a certain extent, and you're ready to explode again, I believe.
Yeah, actually explode, Mark. So, published a video on Ben Krikke, the big man who's coming to Iowa in the transfer portal. Has got 1 year eligibility remaining. Published a video on him last night. Video coming here, I think, in the next hour. Iowa women's basketball had a player enter the portal today, which you hate to see people leave. And she was a kind of a local girl. She was from Montezuma, just down the road from Iowa City. But it gives Iowa an opportunity to go to the portal and maybe add somebody that can help them. They lost Monica Sonano, who was drafted last night by Los Angeles. And so they're going to have an opportunity to go to the portal. That's exciting. So we'll have a video on that. And more, yeah, I still haven't had time to break down the commitment of Drew Campbell to the football program. And we still haven't talked about Iowa added a new Tegan Mullaney, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, talented forward out of Wisconsin. She'll be a part of the 24 class. So lots of content coming. And then we'll have another podcast here dropping in the coming days as well.
So we are out of time. We will move on and expect everyone back here next Tuesday. I am curious, did you, in addition to covering the women's final, of course, did you cover the controversial, did you do a separate piece of content covering the controversial back and forth between whoever the two players are? I don't know.
Clark and Angel Reese, yeah.
Yes, I just know that there was a big flare up on Twitter, and I found it amusing.
No, I really didn't. I talked about it on the post-game show. I think I stated where I talked about it with Gary Close. We had him on the next day for kind of a men's wrap-up, but I didn't produce a separate segment. I thought it was a little bit, try to stay away from the controversial stuff as much as I can. That's not always possible, but the good news is cooler heads prevailed with that, and Caitlin Clark was gracious. I know she was on ESPN and was very, very humble about that whole situation and kind of diffused the situation, which is good for the sport. So, but yeah, I mean, like, as you know this, Mark, controversy like that only helps get views. I mean, not saying that it was all staged, but I'm just saying stuff like that is part of what helps the sport grow. And there was a lot of that. Like this is I've watched the NCAA tournament for years. The women's NCAA tournament this year was super, super physical, super, super, I don't want to say feisty, but it was just, there was more as it relates to chippiness towards the end of the women's season than the men's. I don't know why that is, but there seems to be a little bit of an edge, which is, again, I don't think bad for the sport as long as it's reined in at times.
Yeah. In addition to those 10 million viewers, who knows how many people were just made familiar with the sport, or those personalities, that controversy, everything that stemmed from that, just based on a Twitter feed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's in the era of social media, regardless of what profession, if you're playing basketball or you're an influencer, it's like, or you're both. We get some people out there who are both. It's like, that's how you grow your name. I
must have seen that back and forth like 28 times. And if I wasn't on Twitter, I would have had no idea.
And you don't care about women's college basketball. So if you don't care about it, and you're just getting on Twitter's throwing it at you, imagine what it's thrown to people who have taken an interest. So
well, I am in the sports realm.
Sure. You're right.
Yeah. All right, everyone, get on over to Corey's channel from the Hawkeye at the Storm. And again, we'll be back here to preview the spring game next Tuesday. So get on back here and bring a friend or 2 or 50 with you. And our next show is coming up in about a half hour on the Nebraska channel. Huskers live at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. And we will see you then.